Over the years, Seiko have released more than their fair share of limited edition watches that have become rare and collectible. I've looked at a few on the channel, and some are still in my collection. But I think this watch today might be even more rare than those put together. Welcome to Addicted to Watches. Today we have something special to look at. It's a Seiko model so rare and unique it doesn't even have a model number. There's a good reason for that, which we'll get into shortly. It's a watch that I was lucky just to happen across. This is the Seiko 4r35-04N0. What's so special about this watch, I hear you asking? It does bear some similarities to other watches from Seiko. Other watches we've looked at in recent videos actually. If I bring in the SZSB011 or 006, we can see that in addition to the same overall case as both of them, it shares a dial color, hands and markers with the 011, and the minute track of the 006. That on its own is enough to give this watch a beautiful design, but this watch is hiding a secret. If I turn the watch over to reveal the caseback, we can see that it's not an ordinary caseback. Here we see MSI 50th anniversary. MSI being Morioka Seiko Instruments, a factory for Seiko where they produce many of their high-end parts, including for Grand Seiko. It was founded in 1970, so from that we can put 2 and 2 together to work out that this watch was made in 2020 for the 50th anniversary of the factory. The kicker? This particular model was not available for sale to the general public, only to factory workers, and allegedly the movement was regulated to a much finer degree than usual 4R35s, and the case, hands and markers were also finished to a much higher standard. Comparing this with those SZSB models, I could definitely believe that. The transitions are crisper, and we'll see those hands and markers shortly. How did I end up with it? Dumb luck to be honest. I was browsing Yahoo auctions and just happened to come across it. I had never seen this configuration before, and after a little research found out what it was. And here we are. I won't spend as long as usual going over the watch, since it's pretty similar to these ones we've looked at recently. But, starting with the dial, as you can see, we have that creamy champagne colour with a sunburst effect that is pretty subtle. It's definitely there, but whispers at you rather than shouting. It's the kind of dial that rewards you for looking a bit more closely, as do the markers. These have been finished really nicely. From a distance they might just look polished, the way that they reflect light and have this rainbow effect as the light dances across their surface. But, up close like this, we can see that they've actually had these vertical striations carved into the top surface. I've seen this on other models, but not as finely as these. All of the markers are the same size except for the one at 3 that has been cut short to make way for a date complication. That date has a very thin applied frame that surrounds a white date wheel beneath. It blends in reasonably well with the dial, though the stark white of the date doesn't quite match the creamy colour of the dial. Also applied is the Seiko logo above the pinion, and below 3 lines of text printed in black. Also printed in black is the minute track around the outside of the dial. Here we have the seconds and partial seconds marked, and I think overall it looks really good. In combination with all of that to read the time is of course the hands. These are Dauphine hands with a bevel running down the middle, and have been polished to a mirror sheen. Like the hour markers, it really does look like these are finished to a much higher standard than most other watches from Seiko. I'm not going to claim that these are Zaratsu polished, but there's no denying that they look razor sharp. There was no loom of any kind on the dial, and that theme is continuing here with the hands. The overall vibe of this watch is much more dressy than some others we've looked at before, so I don't mind the lack of loom so much here. Covering all of that is the crystal. This one differs slightly from the SZSB models we looked at earlier. Unfortunately no, it's not that this is sapphire where those are mineral, this one is also mineral, but rather than being domed, this one is dead flat. You don't get the distortions around the edges when looking from an angle, and honestly I'm not sure if that style of crystal would have suited this watch anyway. It's a very clear piece of glass sitting atop the watch, and doesn't pick up many reflections out and about. Taking a step out and we come to the dimensions. Some of these will be familiar, including the 40mm case diameter and 20mm lug width. We also have the same lug to lug of 47.9mm. However, because of the change of crystal, the thickness is reduced by quite a bit, now 11.5mm from 12.7 on some other models. Overall, the dimensions are well balanced, and classic proportions mean it will suit a range of wrist sizes. Case finishing, while well done, follows the same pattern we've seen before. Up front is a polished bezel, which when viewed from the side reveals a second polished surface that undercuts it slightly. It sits atop a brushed upper surface of lugs that curve inwards and down quite elegantly. There is a bit of a sporty feel, but at the same time it's very refined. Turning to the side, and there is that flat polished case side, and here we see how those lugs turn down. Drilled lugs make changing the strap easy, which I like, though I'm not sure they were completely necessary on a watch like this. From the other side, we can see an unfortunately unsigned crown that is guarded on each side. Generally, I'm not too fussed about signed crowns, but on a model like this, which is finished to a higher degree, it seems like a small detail that should have been included. That crown does not screw down, but it does let you hand wind the movement inside, that being the 4R35, also known as the NH35 when sold to other brands. Rumour has it that this one has been regulated at the factory to achieve better accuracy, and the one I have here has performed very well in my time wearing it. It is not, however, visible through a display caseback, which most of the other SZSB models have, but instead we have a solid caseback. It's a thinner caseback thanks to this, and also contributed to the reduction in overall height. Etched into the caseback here we can see the graphic created for the anniversary model from the factory, with Mount Iwate in the background. I'm glad they saved this for the caseback and kept the dial clean, as it helps this watch fly under the radar a bit more, and really be one of those if you know kind of watches. One last thing to cover is the strap. This watch came to me on this brown leather strap, which is branded Seiko on the underside, so I'm assuming it's original. It's also in virtually unworn condition, which may or may not speak to the quality of it. It's pretty much what you'd expect from a Seiko leather strap. Thin, a bit stiff, not very confidence inspiring. It's a dark brown crocodile pattern strap that, at least in terms of appearance, pairs quite well with the watch itself. It definitely dresses up the watch, and a brown strap was always going to work well with a beige or cream dial. We'll get a look at the watch on some other alternative straps shortly, but first, let's see how it looks on wrist with the stock strap. And on wrist, I think you'll agree, this watch looks fantastic. The colour of the dial keeps things understated, but the sunburst finish retains just a little bit of that interest. Turning my wrist, you can see how the polishing on the hands and those textured hour markers really catch the light. It could just be me, but even the polishing of the bezel looks ever so slightly shinier than on other watches. It's a case and dimensions we've seen before on other Tic Tac models, so we know it wears well and sits comfortably on wrist, even with a less than comfortable strap. Changing it out for something similar in colour but softer, and I think this watch is looking even better. We've lost the patterning to the leather, but it makes up for it in comfort. A darker shade of brown or even black will dress up this watch, but if we swap to a lighter brown strap, it gives the watch a much more casual vibe. It doesn't look out of place at all, and out of the three straps we've looked at so far, I'd say it's my favourite. The accent stitching also ties in nicely with the colour of the dial. I'm not convinced a NATO strap would work well with this particular watch, but when I have wanted to change things up and do something a bit more fun, I've gone with this grey suede strap. It may not be to everyone's taste, but it's supremely comfortable and really changes up the look. I wouldn't pick this for an everyday option, but as I said, when I want to go with something fun, I've reached for this. I'm still not completely convinced that the tones of the dial and strap actually work well together, so maybe you can tell me. There aren't really any complaints I have about this watch that I haven't covered in some of my other recent videos featuring watches using this case. It's clearly dressier when compared to those other models, so the lack of lume doesn't bother me, especially when the indices are as nice as these. The original strap does leave a lot to be desired, but the 20mm lug width means you're pretty much guaranteed to have something to replace it with. The main thing about this watch is of course availability. It's pretty much not available. It was only available to be bought by the people who worked in the factory, and there are only so many factory workers, so there will only be so many of these watches out there. There isn't much information about these watches as a result of that, so rather than this video being something to convince you to track one down, it's more like a resource to provide information if you just happen to stumble across one like I did. There are probably many more models like this than we actually realize out there, models that you'll likely never see or even learn about. They could be made for internal purposes like this, or commissioned by larger companies, retailers or brands for collaborations. And that's before we even start getting into their regional limited edition models. But that is a can of worms I'll open another time. What do you think about this watch? Did you already know about this one? Have you got a unicorn in your collection? Am I better off with this or one of the more readily available Tic Tac collabs instead? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.